28th of February 2024, you're very welcome back to Real True Education, not fake news. It's about 10 o'clock at night and it's been a wet, coldish February day here in rural Ireland. There has been a vote in the European Parliament on the wetting of land. It's proposed that 10% of the land in the EU will be submerged in water, more or less, or converted to wetlands. Now, it appears to me to be the weirdest, craziest scheme you could think of. That is until you look at the EU generally and see how crazy they are. Here they're worried about natural habitat, wildlife and all that. And they plant huge, big 150 metre high turbines on some of the Irish grouse moors. Moors that contain an endangered bird, the red grouse. And their Irish red grouse is a separate species from the Scottish red grouse, not a lot, but quite a little different. And they're Ice Age birds, they're here from the Ice Age. They're my favourite bird, I do believe. They're a lovely bird, and I'll show you a bit of one now. This one's covered with dust. I might do another video. This is a taxidermist stuffed red grouse. I don't know whether it's a cocker or a hen. He's up in the attic this last 10 years, and so he's not on display. Maybe someday I'll dust him off. It'll have to be done very carefully. And he has hair right down to his feet. These are my favourite bird. They're a game bird. I never shot one, and I wouldn't like to shoot them. They're a lovely bird. You'll get them there on the internet too. So they're trying to kill them off for windmills. And then they're worried about the habitat. What a crowd of hypocrites. What a crowd of dirty hypocrites. They built the Derrybrain wind farm without the proper assessment. And they killed 50,000 troutlings and immature and mature trout in the local rivers. It was so bad the EU took them to court and ordered them to pull it down. They haven't pulled it down yet. But just be aware, as we approach a referendum on the Constitution, under Irish law, certain things that are protected, like the family, the state has to intervene if they're threatened in court. With EU law on the environment, no one intervenes. It's up to the citizen to put everything he has on the line. The EU doesn't give a hoot about their own land. It's only when this became so embarrassing, when there was such a death of fish, that they acted. But if there had been no death of fish, they wouldn't have acted. And this disregard for the habitats and the examination of the habitats before putting in wind farms and pylons and all that is part and parcel of the EU way of doing business, which means they're crooks, which is why I'm a member of the Irish Freedom Party, to get us the hell out of there. Mightn't happen. We can always crow about it anyway. But the point about it is, folks, this plan has been handed out to member states, including the Irish government. And in my opinion, the SEA directive demands that there be a strategic environmental assessment for agriculture and such things as land use. It's there for agriculture, fishery, forestry, and all of that. There's also a provision where something has a significant impact on the environment, and it doesn't say that it's a good impact or a bad impact. Now, I took a case myself to the High Court, and some poster there asked the question, how did I manage to go to the High Court? Once, twice, three times on my own. I went 3 times. I assisted others. Each time cost me an awful lot of money. There was a big NEP meeting one time, and they were talking about, I think it was something like 100,000 to go to the High Court. I don't know what it was, something like that anyway. And a man that knew me well says Val Martin went over and it only cost him 500. And that is very true. So each of the 3 judicial reviews took 500 a pop. Now you'd have to include soup, I guess a bowl of soup or something to eat in Dublin, and the transport up and down and all that. But all told, maybe 600 euros, 700 euros. But the thing is, on one case I won and I got 2,300 euros back. So if you take it all, I actually made 800 euros on me judicial reviews. So some people say, oh, you lost, you lost. And if you go into the internet there and Google my name, the only thing you'll get up on it is the case that I didn't win. But I want to explain that case. That case was taken because there was no strategic environmental assessment done for energy for the pylons, as which they're a part. And Judge Max Barrett said it was a regulation, that it was an EU regulation, and that Bord Pleanála had no decision to make. In other words, the application for planning was a sham. The board couldn't refuse it. Now, I didn't have the wherewithal to go on. I didn't have the time to proceed with that further. And you run into a problem with cases referred to the European Court of Justice in that you're not allowed to litigate lay as a lay person, which is not very fair. We'll be trying to get that changed too. But the thing about it is, I'm only telling you what happened. But the government should have to do an SCA on this wetting of land. And there's the Irish Farmers Association, there's a whole lot shouting, they're all on the radio, roaring and bawling. I'll bet you a good penny, not one will take the government to court on this. Not one. I don't know why this is. I don't know why it is. I've often lined up groups and things to take them and all that, and they won't do it. Sometimes they don't have the money, and it is expensive. Now, that doesn't mean I'm never going to take a judicial review again. Folks, I'm on top of my bloody head. I mean, if my farm will suffer, if I've got a nice little neat one, I might take it. But the thing is, as I say, when I went up to take the last one, I was inundated with migrants. I was only one head out of a heap of heads, migrants all over the place looking to stay in the country. So the thing about it is that that's the tester. There's nothing stopping any organisation going into the High Court and saying that the wetting of this land and this government planner programme, which is if it's co-funded by the EU or not, the directive says co-funded by the EU or not. It's for agriculture. So therefore there has to be an SCA, the same as for the wind farms. And they're not going to do it. Now, it's Prince Philip, God be good to him, used to say, it's an enigma. Oh, it's an enigma. I didn't always know what an enigma was. I thought it was a thing for bashing up spuds for pigs. You know, you mix oats through it. But no, an enigma is a different thing altogether. It's a kind of a phrase, like, you know, so it means a strange thing. Something that doesn't make much sense. But the EU can issue a directive, and if they issue the directive, then it's up to the governments of the member states has a few months or so to transpose it. So it's not the law till they actually do it into a transposition, and they have to transpose it by means of a statutory instrument. Okay, and when they do that, then that's the Irish version of the EU directive. And that's generally good enough. I don't really have much of a problem with that. No, so that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that if it's a regulation, it becomes law the minute it's signed. Now, the SCA directive makes no exemption for regulations. And in fact, the regulations of the EU and the one for the pylons did not exempt the SCA. It said that European law has to be complied with. So if you want to do something under an EU regulation, in my opinion, you have to do the SEA and you have to do the EIA, and that's the Environmental Impact Assessment, and the Habitats Directive, the appropriate assessment under the Habitats Directive. The fact that the EU decrees this is irrelevant. It doesn't apply to the EU itself, and that's a fault. The EU can issue whatever directives it likes, but the member state has to do the SCA, and if it fails the SCA, it's up to the EU then to deal with it. But the member states they wet themselves along with the land. They wet their underwear as well because they're afraid of the EU. But that's what has to be done. You go into the High Court with your barrister, your junior counsel, and your solicitor. 40 grand to get there. You then appeal when the High Court will usually not go with you. They're nearly bought off by the government. But there's a few judges that wouldn't altogether agree with that. You know, it just depends on who you get. Now, so the next thing, you go to the Court of Appeal, and they might or might not hear it. Well, the case of the Friends of the Irish Environment might affect this, but they'll probably throw it out as well. And then you go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will do the right thing, and they'll give you a ruling. But it's expensive, and that's the problem. But after all, this is a huge planner programme. The IFA, the ICMSA, they all have vast funds. They can collect. We'd all collect if they did it properly. I know a junior counsel, I know a solicitor, so we'll dig up a senior counsel somewhere. Good on you, that's the situation. They're going to do it on the sly. They're going to be roaring and bawling on RTE, on the Celt, on the Farmers Journal, and everything else, Whillabaloo and all the rest, and not one of them will mention that if they're going to do it, they have to do an SCA with public participation and the right to take a judicial review. And however it is, it's one of the great things I cannot understand that nobody can see that. It's to say about paying for the television license, it's the law. It definitely is the law. They're going to try and avoid the whole thing. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's my little bit on it so far, and I'll be back with something else again. Thank you.